Greetings from the LSU Coaches Box here at Camping World Stadium in Orlando. They've got snacks. They've got Pirates booty. They've got trail mix. This is probably the place where they made some of those calls on the 1 yard line that didn't quite work out early in the game. What a night. 45-24 Florida State. I said I thought Florida State would win. I said I thought the game would go over 56.5. I did not expect this. I did not expect this level of domination from Florida State. It was something that we haven't seen from Florida State really since 2013. I'll give you a game it felt like. And I'm not saying this team's going to win the national title. I'm not trying to compare these two teams. But in terms of it's been a while, but this feels like something. It feels like when they went up to Clemson in 2013 and just stomped them, because you knew that was a good Clemson team, maybe not a great Clemson team, but you knew Florida State was in a very different place than it had been in previous years. And that is where they are right now. This was an absolute domination in the second half. It was actually pretty back and forth in the first half. It was pretty interesting. And it's been a long time since we saw a Florida State team do this. And so this was what I was thinking. I went to Florida State's practice about a week and a half ago. You saw the interview with Jared Verse and the offensive lineman, Maurice Smith and Dimitri Emanuel from that visit. And I remember watching and I thought, okay, Jared Verse is special. Their transfer defensive tackle from Western Michigan, he could be very good. Keon Coleman, you could tell, was going to be awesome. Jaheim Bell, you could tell there were going to be a lot of ways to use him. But you weren't sure generally how on the offensive and defensive lines they were going to hold up against LSU's athletes. LSU's got good athletes, but they held up and they also kept trying to run the ball, which is something that LSU kind of gave up on. LSU basically figured out we can't run the ball unless it's Jaden Daniels scrambling, and we're probably going to get Jaden killed if we keep doing that with him. So they really kind of gave up on the run. Florida State kept trying. They ran a counter that Mekhi Wingo, the LSU defensive tackle, was blowing up the counters in the first half. And then LSU went to this two-back counter, and Brian Kelly said it after the game. He said, we just couldn't fit it. We couldn't figure out how to fit it. And it was pretty amazing to see that it just kept kind of coming in waves and that LSU really couldn't do anything to stop it. So I'm not ready to predict that Florida State's a playoff team or that they're even going to beat Clemson in a few weeks. But I was very impressed with the way this team was put together, very impressed with the way it handled itself, where things could have gone really off the rails. So first series, LSU marches the ball down. They're on the 1 yard line. Florida State commits a penalty, gives them 4 cracks from the 1 yard line, and they stuff them every single time. Then it felt like Florida State was just committing penalty after penalty. Now, some of those were probably cheapies. Some of those probably didn't need to be called, but it felt like it could get away from them at any moment, but it didn't. Now, a lot of that was they stopped LSU again in the red zone, and LSU came away with no points. And I think that's where LSU's frustration started to mount. And really in the second half, you started to see Florida State's pass rush get to Jaden Daniels more. In the first half, he was able to escape, get out, gain some yards, or keep plays alive and get the ball downfield. In the second half, they were getting to him. Let's listen to Mike Norvell talking about the Seminoles' performance.
Proud of our team. There's been a lot of build-up and excitement about this game, this opportunity. Talked all the way through fall camp and, even through the off-season, summer workouts, just all of it, just the mindset and the approach that these guys, what they bring to work every day. They've done a remarkable job in building relationships, just the way that they compete with each other. I told them before the day that they're built for a time like this stage, two top 10 teams in the country. Wasn't real pleased with some of the things that showed up in the first half. I thought we made some foolish mistakes at times. And that happens. You got to play this game with emotion. And I want an emotional team. And I want it to be controlled. I want to make sure that we're disciplined and continuing to focus on the little things. And I told the guys at halftime and both sides did a remarkable job in how they responded to that. But just that second half, that was a glimpse of what I think this team can do and where I think it can go. But there's a lot of things that we're going to have to clean up after. And, I'll appreciate them. Obviously there's excitement in the locker room, but that was one game. That was our first step. And it was a big step, right? You get a chance to be on this stage, you want to go play well. And I don't think we played our best game, but I thought that second half, we were able to really finish the way that we wanted to. And, I'm proud of them for the way that they continue to battle, the way they showed the resilience, and just who they are. I'd be remiss to not, in that atmosphere, our crowd, our fans, unbelievable job. It was an electric atmosphere that we got to play in. It's great to be able to be here in our home state and to see such a wonderful turnout and just the energy in that game. It had a championship type feel to it. I thought it was just a great experience for our players and you all that are part of the program.
So, Tyler Wright, I don't want FSU to be top 5 yet. Tyler, I don't know how to break this to you. They're going to be top 5 tomorrow morning. They will be top 5 tomorrow morning. Don't worry about that. That doesn't matter right now. None of that really matters right now. All that matters is that they played a great game. We don't need to project out anything. And by the same token, LSU people, it's not over yet. This is not the end of your year, but you have a lot of reasons to be concerned. There was a lot tonight that you should be worried about. For me, the thing that I thought would be frustrating if I was an LSU fan, well, one is the secondary, but also Harold Perkins. The good Lord put Harold Perkins on this earth to go get the ball, to go get the quarterback. And they're not letting him do that. I thought when they said they're going to work him at linebacker, that it was going to be a case of making him a Where's Waldo type player where offenses would have to figure out where he was on every play. And that's terrifying if you're an offense. But Harold Perkins tonight was a spy. He was standing there 7 yards from the line of scrimmage, staring at Jordan Travis, waiting for something to happen. If you watch the last half of LSU's 2022 season, Harold Perkins is not a guy that you just wait for something to happen with. You go have him make something happen. That part was especially frustrating. And Brian Kelly got asked about it after the game, and I don't think it was a real satisfying answer.
For the first time. So there's a learning curve there. He's learning. He's learning how to play linebacker for the first time. We put him in a position last year where he was see ball, get ball. Now he's in a position where he's got to get over the top. He's got a back coming out of the backfield. He's got to be disciplined and can't lose his eyes on the quarterback mesh. Fourth down. There's a lot going on there, and he's trying to sort it out. You're catching a young player early on in his career, and he's going through some growing pains.
Maybe just let him see ball, get ball. He's really good at that. I don't know that you're helping him because in the NFL, edge rushers make more than off-ball linebackers. So who's that helping? I don't understand that. I just don't. Now, as far as the secondary goes for LSU, that's a personnel issue. It's a shocking personnel issue because we're just not used to seeing that from LSU. We're used to seeing them having a stock cupboard where there's always some stud who's about to go to the NFL after year 3, and there's always some freshman who's going to come in and start, and he's going to go to the NFL after year 3, and there's like 2 more of those guys that are on the way. But that is not where they're at right now. That is not where LSU secondary is. And Brian Kelly got asked about what they could have done differently with Florida State's receivers, and his answer was quite telling.
It means everything as to what our mindset is. Like, how do we handle this? Is this who we want to be?
Oh, that is not the receiver's answer. I'm sorry. That is the mindset answer. I will get you that receiver's answer. Well, I don't really need to get it for you. It was basically, he said a couple things about the receivers and the matchups, and then he basically said, no, there was nothing more we could do. And he's right. there's nothing you can do with Keon Coleman, who, by the way, from Louisiana, went to Michigan State first, hit the transfer portal, was going to go to Florida State or Ole Miss. And I saw a lot of Ole Miss people like, oh my God, we could have had him too. He was incredible. 3 touchdown catches, 2 incredibly contested, and then 1 where he snaked his way through the LSU secondary. Just a great night for Keon Coleman. And then also Jaheim Bell, who transferred from South Carolina, had a great night. He scored 2 touchdowns. He had a catch, and then they gave him a kind of an end around at the end of the game that he ran in. And remember, he played some tailback for South Carolina at the end of last season. There's a lot of versatility there, a lot of things they can do with him. So LSU added to those weapons because they already had Trey Benson, who is going to be more successful against a lot of those ACC teams. You're going to see him be able to break runs against a lot of those ACC teams. LSU's front was pretty stout. He had a lot to deal with tonight. But you've got him, Johnny Wilson, obviously. Johnny had a couple pretty bad drops in the first half, but shook it off and really came back strong in the second half, had a great game. So I just think they've got so many different options. And then, you look at them defensively, they can get after you. It's more than just Jared Verse on that D line. When they were rotating in their second group, they were still getting pressure. And that's the thing I wasn't really sure they were going to be able to do. And if you can do that, you can play with just about anybody. So for Florida State, here's how this shakes out. They're good enough to beat everybody in the ACC. They need to beat Clemson, and they need to beat them. It's interesting because they won tonight, if you want to make the playoff, you don't actually have to beat Clemson twice. You just have to beat them the second time. You don't have to beat them the first time. You got to beat them the second time. I think they want to beat them both times if they end up playing them twice. But I'm much more confident now in that matchup because I was worried about Florida State's offensive line against a group of just, in a bunch of NFL defensive linemen, which is what LSU has, which is what Clemson has. They're not going to see that really anywhere else. Florida's got some okay defensive linemen, but the other teams they're going to play are not going to be the level of LSU, and they're not going to be the level of Clemson on the line of scrimmage. And what we saw is that they can handle themselves on the line of scrimmage just fine. So I think that should give you confidence going forward. Now it's interesting because Mike Norvell has to go and figure out how to make sure that they understand, hey, guys, you got to start over this week. You can't let this carry over. You can't let the celebration carry over. I do think, though, the leadership on this team has been through so much. Remember, guys like Jordan Travis went through some really tough times at Florida State. So they know how bad it can be. Like, they were there when they lost to Jacksonville State. They understand. And so I think that part of it will help. You'll have those guys in the locker room who can say, guys, we've seen when everybody thought we were worthless. So don't believe when everybody says we're the best, because they can turn on you in a week. And absolutely, as one of the people who will turn on you, we can turn on you in a week. So I think Florida State probably has the kind of leadership that will make sure that doesn't happen. But probably the bigger question is, how does LSU respond to this? And I was playing this quote before when it was in the wrong place, but this is the time when I want to play this Brian Kelly quote because it is very interesting.
It means everything as to what our mindset is. Like, how do we handle this? Is this who we want to be? Or do we look at this and say, this isn't the kind of football team we want to be? So, when you have these kinds of losses, they're disappointing. In some instances, they're devastating losses. But it's how you respond to them. And they have a chance to respond to this very disappointing performance in the second half. And so the choices they'll have to make will be ones that start tomorrow. How they handle themselves 24/7 is really what I'll be interested in seeing.
Brian Kelly was really critical of himself and his coaching staff after the game. He called it an abject failure of coaching. And, I think there's probably a lot of LSU fans who would agree. I think, there's probably some LSU fans calling into their radio shows right now that are probably just irate. This is not how they play. Florida LSU is not the type of program that just gets whooped. And this has happened actually a couple times since Brian Kelly got there. And I think it's interesting because they overachieved last season for sure. They should, you did not expect them to beat Alabama, did not expect them to win the SEC West. So you've got to give them credit for that. You've got to give the staff credit for bouncing back from that FSU loss at the beginning of the season and then winning those games. They did get destroyed by Tennessee at home. They were not competitive in the SEC championship game against Georgia. That also happened. So if you're LSU, where the standard is winning national championships, and your last 3 head coaches have all won national championships, and you brought in Brian Kelly to win more national championships, that is what has to be done. That is where you've got to go. You cannot ever have nights like this because you don't see Alabama get beat like this. You don't see Georgia get beat like this. It doesn't happen. And those are the teams that consistently compete for national titles. I think Brian Kelly was trying to manage our expectations for most of the summer, though. If you look back at SEC Media Days, he was saying over and over again, we're a few recruiting classes away. Not sure we're deep enough yet. Well, I think that showed. That showed in the second half when they were just getting pulverized up front, which is not something you expect to see from LSU. They never matched up with Florida State's receivers. And again, not being good at the secondary is crazy to think about. With LSU, LSU always has players in the secondary. It's like Arrested Development. There's always money in the banana stand. There's always corners at LSU, except now there's not. So they've got to get that all worked out. Let's hear a little more from Brian Kelly.
Pushing you around and 31-0 run.
Yeah, I'm quite aware of the score, and I didn't like the way we came out. I sensed it, I felt it, and I've got to take accountability and responsibility for the way that we came out in the second half. It's disappointing, but the buck stops with me, and I've got to get our football team to understand and recognize that you've got to play this game for 4 quarters with the mentality, and we just did not. For some reason, we thought we were somebody else. We thought we were the 2-time national champion Georgia Bulldogs or something. I don't know what we thought, but we were mistaken.
You are not the 2-time national champion Georgia Bulldogs for sure, and neither is Florida State yet. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves. We're not going to be the people who in week 1 watch one game and overreact to one result. Okay, we were those people with Colorado, but we're not going to do it again twice in the same weekend. Okay. Florida State, really good. I thought Mike Norvell put it very well earlier. You saw a glimpse of what they can be. They got to keep doing it, but you saw a glimpse. LSU, there is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot to fix. There's a lot of talent, though. So it doesn't mean that this season's over for them either. They can get much better as the season goes on, but they got to do some things. When you're on the goal line, you got a 6'5" quarterback. Maybe you sneak it. Maybe put 2 giant guys behind him and push him in the way the Eagles do with Jalen Hurts. Maybe you try that. Maybe with Harold Perkins, you let him go do the thing he was born to do. Maybe you do that. There are other ways. There are ways to fix it. I don't know how many of these snacks these LSU coaches ate tonight. Maybe not enough, but hopefully they had a little trail mix to soothe their pain, because I'm sure it was a rough night in this booth where the LSU coaches were probably screaming and ranting and watching Florida State players run up and down the field on them. But it can get better. And for Florida State, it also can get better, which should be very, very encouraging. Guys, fantastic first weekend. We got one more game. Clemson and Duke will be playing Monday night. So we got a little Monday night college football. Exciting game because we want to see Clemson. Now we've seen Florida State. We've seen North Carolina. Both have whooped up on SEC teams. We get to see Clemson in a conference game against Duke. Mike Elko won 9 games in his first year at Duke. That qualifies as a miracle. I believe he can be named a Saint now. So that should be fun. Also, tomorrow night is a Dear Andy show. So you know how to find me. Andy_Staples on X or AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com. You can email your question in words. You can email your question as a video. We take them all ways. We just like good questions. So we're going to answer those questions on the show. We've also got Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl talking about all the prospects that we saw this weekend and who really shined. Guys, it's going to be a fun week. We got Alabama, Texas on the horizon. Colorado, Nebraska. It's all happening now. We'll talk to you soon.